Okay, so this is one of those videos that could go on for like 2 hours. I don't want to get into all the formulas. They're not really, they don't translate well on YouTube. But talking about causation is important, and a lot of it's very simple and can be viewed just as common sense, the things that we see and perceive. For instance, knocking over a line of dominoes. We don't expect a domino just to fly away when we touch it because our physical reality is repetitive, like mundane and repetitive, always producing the same results for the most part. Probabilistically, physically, we can't just walk through a wall tomorrow. It's very likely that walls will still be hard tomorrow. And if they aren't, then we have serious problems. So I'm not going to go over the formulas in this video, although they tend to make even the simplest things look more difficult than they have to be to stand up to the scrutiny of people with nuanced and precise attacks. But the reality is there's a magic to understanding philosophy that's not being portrayed necessarily, because people that get into philosophy always rock it up to the PhD level. You become interested in it. It's got substance. It gives you ground to stand on. And so you want to be the best at it that you can be. But you don't have to do that. And the people at ground level that don't want to do any of it actually need to do some of it. And so this channel is meant to communicate with those at the ground level that this can be something magical for you that doesn't have to be disassociated from reality, kind of magical. It can be magical as reality. That's the communication I'm trying to get across on this channel. And we're talking about probabilistic causality. I think the best way to communicate that with the common person is to talk about it in a way with objects and actions that you can see daily, and you can make the point that way. That's what I'm going to do in this video, talking about probabilistic causality. Talking about it in simple language might cause some people to accuse me of being reductive, and you're not wrong. It is reductive. I just don't think anybody wants to watch an exhaustive, formulaic-driven video on YouTube. But I do think some want to enjoy the magic of philosophy, and when I say that, I mean grounded magic. You can be as precise as you want with philosophy, and the amount of work you put in is the level of the amount of knowledge that you'll have, and the breadth and solid nature of the ground you'll be standing on. It's not all or nothing. I often talk about causation and determinism. There's a couple of videos on the channel. One of them is circular causation and the other one is backwards causation. Of course, your typical causation is sort of like the domino notion, where you knock over a domino, hits the next one. You know that what's going to happen when you come to it. When you hit it, it's not a big surprise, and that's because reality is repeatable. Let's talk a little about probabilistic causality. Probabilistic causality is the idea that causes don't guarantee their effects, but instead make them more likely to happen. Regular exercise doesn't guarantee that someone will live longer, but it increases the probability of a longer lifespan. The cause, regular exercise, raises the likelihood of the effect, longevity, but the effect is uncertain. Some people who exercise regularly still die young due to genetics, accidents, or other health factors, while some sedentary people live to be very old. But I do think, those are going to be like generalized exceptions too, so we shouldn't relativize the notions. This is why health studies show that exercise is associated with increased life expectancy on average, rather than promising that every individual who exercises will definitely live longer. Multifactorial causation, when multiple factors work together and create a single cause. So for example, a house fire could be caused by multiple factors working together: faulty wiring, dry weather, strong winds, or nearby flammable materials. Each factor contributes to the single effect, the fire, but no single cause might have been sufficient on its own. Causal overdetermination. This occurs when multiple causes are sufficient to produce the effect. For instance, if someone is simultaneously shot and poisoned with a lethal dose, either cause alone would have been enough to cause their death, but both occurred. Even the most simple causes that we see in our reality are wound up in unimaginable threads of determinism and complex physics. But that doesn't make them relative. They're still relational, They're just complex and relational. Now, because we can see repetitive effects and apparent limitations, we can conceive of a boundary where probability and improbability and impossibility begin and end. Could physical reality change in some limited sense? Sure. Could our perspective of it change? It's determined to do so. Does that mean everything is relative and you just get to relax and not think about it? No. It means you have to think about it way more. Everything is relational, not relative. So modern philosophers debate whether probabilistic causation is epistemic, reflecting our incomplete knowledge of deterministic processes. It seems like things just get even more complicated when you add duration and change. It sort of feels like if you could stop time, in that instance, the universe would be actual, and it could be known as actual in the moment if it would just stop change. Even though it would be infused with its history and expectation for the future, its being in the moment, it seems like if you could stop time, that would be actual. As soon as we set it in motion, the complexity of understanding it becomes absurd. Philosophers also discuss probable causality as metaphysical, capturing genuine indeterminacy in nature. For instance, the spontaneous decay of the radium atom. Although there could be causal factors we can't detect or measure, is it really spontaneous? I mean, you guys tell me, is it really spontaneous? Or even if it is spontaneous, that is still a determined part of our reality. It's a part of reality that we can't change. It's a part of reality that is inherent to it. So while it is spontaneous, it's still accounted for by determinism. And just a side note, and this is a tangent, and it's the way I learned about free will. It's the same pattern as this. The question was, someone asked Thomas Aquinas, how could I be free to choose if God already knows what I'm going to choose? Like God already knows what your future is, how that's determined. So how can you be free to choose if your life's determined? And the answer was interesting, and it helped me change my line of thinking, and it sort of links to this probable causality and spontaneity and determinism. And it's that God looks into the future, and the future that you have includes the choices that you made, your free will. So just because your future can be seen on a timeline doesn't necessarily mean that while you were living your life, you didn't make choices freely. So it's something to think about. One doesn't preclude the other, and they can both exist simultaneously. And that's sort of my thinking with this probable causality and spontaneity, is that spontaneity or random behavior is actually determined to happen within a window of reality. And it's those kinds of changes that I think maybe sort of prevent absolute determinism from happening. I'm not religious, okay, but think of it more like an alien designing a civilization type game, the ultimate AI game. I might put something into the program like that so that every time I played the game, it wasn't the same game over and over. So that's something to think about. When philosophers talk about probable causality, they might talk about the pragmatic use for it. It's simply a useful tool for prediction and intervention. I actually think all these factors come into play when talking about probabilistic causality. Even the most simple of cause and effect scenarios are complex if you zoom in and evaluate all the factors involved. There may be a high probability of recurrence, and that leads to an opportunistic reduction. And it may be pragmatic given efficiency concerns, but it can also create a belligerence and a failure to understand the truth behind the apparent simplicity. And it creates intellectual laziness. Don't just look at something and say, that's common sense. Really sit down and think about all the factors at play. And typically when people insist upon common sense, you should be suspicious. You should be suspicious. If you guys like this kind of philosophical subject matter, help us out by liking the video and subscribing to the channel.